So this is the Qualitative Research Series. We actually started it as a peer-led online series for early career researchers. The Qualitative Research Series is within the Rising Scholars Network. So we started last year. We host online sections and we have a WhatsApp group where we learn about qualitative studies and analysis, mostly because we realize that most people in the global south, made up of Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, sometimes struggle with qualitative studies. So it's very nice of us to be here. And then thank you so much for joining in. So let's proceed. The section for today is the philosophy of research. Yes, the philosophy of research, understanding the foundations of knowledge in qualitative research, is going to be handled by a facilitator, Tosha Barnejee, and he's going to lead us through some of the things that has to do with assumptions and methodological ways that we handle our qualitative research, especially when you come to trying to understand how to even proceed. So before we proceed, I just want to give us a housekeeping notes. We are recording the section, and your continued participation makes us to understand that you've given us your consent to go ahead with this recording. So we always mute participants during the section so that the speaker can be heard, and also to reduce background noise. And if you experience any issues during the sections, please feel free to put it up in the chat below or send me a message, ugo.f.oputa@gmail.com. Or you can even put it in the WhatsApp group. I will send the link to the WhatsApp group here. So during the section, we have a Q&A towards, after 45 minutes of the section, we'll have a Q&A. But if you have any question in between, please feel free to put it up on the chat box. And also put up any comments. Maybe you have any technical issues, you can also put it up on the chat as well. So thank you so much. Now, to introduce the facilitator. Yeah, so we have Tosha Barnejee, like I mentioned. He is the, yes, Tosha Barnejee is a qualitative researcher with nearly a decade of teaching experience at postgraduate and graduate level in both UK and India. And he's currently pursuing a PhD in management studies with a specialization in strategic management at Oxford Brookes University in the UK. He's committed to fostering critical engagement and reflective learning. He brings a strong interdisciplinary background that bridges academia and the corporate world. He has contributed to multiple articles with top-ranked journals and publishers. He's dedicated to advancing knowledge through context-sensitive research and meaningful academic mentorship. So we are all in good hands. Thank you so much, Tosha. Please, over to you. We are all waiting to learn from you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Hugo, and thank you for the introduction. And I welcome all to the session. Just to begin with, I am no philosopher. I am a management scholar. And when we were discussing about how to start with this series long back, I thought of let us focus on the first step of understanding myself before we move on to interpret or understand others and what is happening around. So, in that context, the topic of philosophy of research, presentation came up, and today we are here. So, philosophy is something that I have also learned in my process of being a PhD candidate. I am still a student, just like most of you. So, I might not know everything. So please pardon me for that. I'm telling this beforehand. And whatever I'm sharing, I'm open to your interpretations. And if you get lost, that's okay, because I know nothing and I'm just repeating what Socrates said. So, moving ahead, when we are talking about philosophy of research, uh, today's our session objective is to understand how philosophy is necessary, or why philosophy is necessary for a PhD researcher or a research scholar or early career research scholars, for them, how it helps them in understanding their approach, or fixing their approach towards uncovering truth. So, what is research philosophy? Research philosophy is about how knowledge is developed and what we consider as valid knowledge. This reflects the researcher's own worldview, a set of assumptions about how they see reality and the world. This matters because the assumptions shape every stage of research: what questions we ask, what methods we use, how we interpret findings. Even if we are not aware of it, our philosophy is always influencing our decisions. So, being aware of our research philosophy helps us ensure that our study is consistent, transparent, and logically sound. So, research philosophy is the overall framework or approach that guides how research is conducted, uh, and researcher's philosophy are the individual's beliefs and values that he personally holds, which may influence how he designs and interprets research. In other words, research philosophy is determined by development of knowledge and its nature, or epistemology, how knowledge is created, what counts as valid knowledge, and how we come to know things. And researcher's philosophy is guided by the ontology, the beliefs, my beliefs, your beliefs about reality, what exists, what is real. Great. So, the core philosophical concepts, when we talk about research philosophy, the core philosophical concepts that comes first is metaphysics. It's the overall umbrella or the branch of philosophy concerned with the fundamental nature of reality and existence. It deals with questions like what is real, what kinds of things exist, what is their nature and relationship. And then we have ontology, which talks about what is the nature of reality. Is it subjective? Is it objective? Right? Then we have epistemology. Then we have axiology and the rhetoric. Axiology talks about what is the role of values in research, and rhetoric talks about the language of research and methodology that we adapt in our process of doing research. Great. So, when we are talking about research philosophy, it is essential to mention where it actually originated from. So, research philosophy, as we know about it today, uh, is majorly a Western concept or Western philosophical thought, which originated in ancient Greece. The tradition began with pre-Socratic philosophers from cities like Miletus in modern-day Turkey, or Thales, or Anaximander, Heraclitus. They were among the first in the West to seek natural explanations for the universe and phenomena. So after these people came into the picture, we always are aware of these three, the trio, the famous trio of Socrates, his student Plato, and Aristotle. It originated, philosophy as we know of today, originated from majority of the thoughts of these three greats. So what originates from there is a story that I would like to share with all of you, which is known as Plato's allegory of the cave. I'm taking this Plato's allegory of the cave from the book Republic, book 7. What happens is here Plato talks about a group of people, a situation in which a group of people have been chained inside a dark cave since childhood. They always face the wall. They're not allowed to turn their heads around, and behind them a fire burns, And between the fire and these prisoners, others carry objects that cast shadows on the wall. Just try to imagine a set of people right from childhood who are sitting facing the wall, seeing at shadows which are being made by people who are standing at their back, and they are not allowed to look, back or turn their shoulders, right? So one fine day, one of these prisoners, uh, you know, gets freed from this shackle, from this life. He goes out of the cave, and once he goes out of the cave, he gets very confused and pained, uh, you know, to see what was inside. So he struggles and goes out of the cave. He looks at the sun, but cannot see everything because all his life he has been in the dark. Gradually, his eyes adjusted. He could first see reflections, then objects, and finally the sun, the source of all light and life. He realized that shadows that he has seen all through his life in the cave were illusions. So out of compassion, he understood that this is the truth. The sun is the truth. The outside world is the truth. And out of compassion to his colleagues who were inside the cave, he went back to free others. Okay. But back in the darkness, he again felt uncomfortable. His vision got impaired. And the remaining prisoners, okay, on hearing, started mocking him. They rejected his account of the outside world. If anyone has switched on their mic, please switch it off. Thank you. And out of compassion, this person who went out, he came to free his colleagues, and then these colleagues, start mocking him. They reject his account of the outside world and even threaten to kill anyone who talks otherwise than the shadows that they have seen all through their life. They are not ready to believe that there might be something else which is true. Okay, now when I'm sharing this story, this was a story shared by Plato in his book, and of course, his students also. What I would like all of you, the participants, the 38 people that we have here today, to kindly uh, check something called the mentimeter.com. You can go to mentimeter.com or scan the QR code that you can see here to your mobile and register. What do you feel? What does the allegory of the cave say about the difference between appearance and reality? What appeared to these people and what the reality actually was? I hope everybody can see the QR code, and I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes for coming up with an answer. Please register what you feel. What do you feel about? What is the difference between appearance and reality as seen in the allegory of the cave story? Well, I can see people are logging in. Hopefully, you'll start writing soon. 1 word, 2 word, 3 words, that's enough. Okay, great. Now we have something. Okay, some are saying that it's surprise. Somebody is talking about reflective mirror. Okay, reality is different from appearance. Interesting, very good. The reality for anyone is what appears in their sights or their daily perception. Okay, great. How humans often mistake appearance for reality. That's true. Illusion can be man-made. Yeah, great, great. Anybody else? One more moment. Okay, lovely. We'll proceed from here. So, what Plato's allegory actually talks about, it illustrates how humans often live in ignorance. We, as humans, we often live in ignorance. We mostly form our beliefs based on our environment. Yes, that's true. We mistake shadows that appears to us for reality, but true knowledge requires a philosophical awakening. That is, stepping out of the cave into the light of reason. Plato's allegory of the cave emphasizes the importance of perspective, reflection, and the holistic understanding in seeking truth. The allegory also warns us, accepting surface data as truth, urging critical reflection, appreciation of multiple perspectives, and methodological awareness. Now, Plato's allegory of the cave, I think for me, the most important thing that Plato's allegory of the cave tells us is about not to take everything that we see on the surface for granted. We might see a picture of a woman. We don't know what is the situation that woman is coming from. We don't know what is the perspective that she is carrying towards other people in this world, right? So that way, Plato's allegory of the cave wants us to not take truth for granted, and that is what is very important for us as philosophers to take. Plato's allegory of the cave represents the intellectual journey that we have from ignorance to enlightenment. Great. So what happens is, taking this ahead, modern day, sorry, modern day scientific research dwells among a called approach, which is grounded basically on the Cartesian subject object dualism, based on what we have seen. Uh, this subject object dualism was thought of by René Descartes, a famous philosopher and intellectual from the Renaissance period. Okay, who conceptualized the world into the realm of the mind, res cognitus, and res extensa, that is the material object. So there was two things, the knower and the known. So based on this knower and the known, the modern Western philosophical thoughts have evolved. They have got a continuum of philosophical branches or standpoints, which on one end of that continuum rests objectivism, which talks about objective dimension. The doctrine holds that knowledge exists beyond human thoughts, so we should always look at knowledge, being away from the material. So if I am the knower, I should always separate myself from what has to be known, the world, right? And on the other end of the continuum rests subjectivism. What is subjectivism tells? Subjectivism, the dimension, the doctrine, it holds that knowledge is subjective. It owes this stance to their ontology, which is nominalist. The other one had the ontology of realism. So subjectivism tells us that social phenomena results from the perception, language, and actions of social actors. Okay, we construct from our experiences. So the known and the known cannot be separated. So on the basis of these two, the Cartesian subject-object dualism, modern philosophical thoughts have developed. Sorry. On the basis of these stances that you take, your epistemology, your ontology, your axiology, and your uh, rhetoric will also develop. So if you are an objectivist, your epistemology would be focusing on observable, measurable facts. Your axiology would be free from value. Your methodology would be inclined on experiments. Rhetoric would be objective and formal. And if you are a subjective, if you believe in the subjective side of things, Your epistemology would be anti-positivist, which is opposite of the other one, and it would be grounded on opinion, perception, interpretations of the actors involved in activities to be studied. Axiology would be value laden, and the rhetoric and your words would be personal and literary based on what you learn from the research itself. Methodology will use hermeneutics, would be contextual. Great. So subjectivism and objectivism, the two continuums on the basis which decides what kind of paradigms we fall into. Now, when we talk about paradigms, these are the set of beliefs attached to an individual representing how he defines the nature of his world based on taken for granted assumptions of one's ontology, epistemology, methodology, this set of beliefs uh, representing their worldviews. We have different paradigms which defines the nature of the world. Great. So they are definitive ways of sensing and they provide background to a researcher's voice. So we know as paradigms, we have heard of positivism, we have heard of post-positivism, interpretivism, critical theory, so on and so forth. We have these paradigms. And that in time, people used to fight on the basis of the paradigm that they represented. They used to fight amongst themselves that this is not the way to learn or get access to the truth, or this is not the way to get access to the truth. There were paradigm wars in back in time. But today we have almost understood that there are different ways to know the truth. Now, why paradigm matters? I'll tell you the story from a Buddhist text called Tirtha Sutta from the Pali Canon of the five blind men and an elephant. There was a king once upon a time who wanted to understand how people perceive truth. So, what happened is he called upon five blind men and he got an elephant and asked these five people to define the elephant. Now, what happened was one blind man who was holding the tail, he talked about, okay, an elephant is like a rope. The other one, which held on to the belly of the elephant, okay, elephant is just like a wall. The other one who held on to the leg, uh, you know, defined an elephant. Okay, an elephant is just like a pillar. Now, every person touched a different part of the elephant and concluded something else. This illustrated, though there are different versions of the story in different contexts, different people have, talked about this particular story in different ways. This story illustrates that truth is multifaceted and individual perspectives are incomplete. This calls attention to the need for synthesis of perspectives to grasp a more complete understanding. So both the stories, both Plato's story and the man and the five blind men and the elephant, both of these stories, these are metaphoric stories, philosophical metaphors, which highlight limits of our perception and the complexity of truth. An elephant is an elephant. It is not a tail. It is not a rope. It is not a pillar. It is not a wall. It cannot be, defined by those terms. But yet, those are parts of it. Those, the parts of it that can be defined in those ways. So, in research philosophy, especially in qualitative inquiry, these metaphors that we have talked about today critique naive realism, the idea that perception straightforwardly reflects reality. Whatever we see or look at is what is happening over there. No, they do not speak in that way. Okay, this thought process aligns with constructivist and interpretivist paradigm in qualitative research, which is mostly used in qualitative research. So knowledge in qualitative research, constructivist, interpretivist paradigms, knowledge is constructed, situated, and partial. So research must be context aware, reflexive, and open to multiple perspectives. So what happens is in qualitative research, we encourage methodological pluralism using diverse viewpoint to approach complex social realities. And when we are talking about paradigms, we think about, okay, paradigms shape what we see, how we interpret data, and what counts as valid knowledge without being close to others who are thinking in a different way. So these philosophical positions that we have talked about, the ways that we have talked about, these philosophical positions, they take a toll on the way we approach our research design. So ontological and epistemological positions influence choices of methodology, uh, ethnography, or we take up case study, or we will take up uh, qualitative other inquiries of, or let's say document analysis or something like that, and selection of data collection methods, focus groups or participant research or action research, and all those approaches. So research design is primarily shaped by the philosophical assumptions that we talk about, uh, our ontology, okay, reality that we look at, and knowledge, the epistemology. These assumptions influence what we study, how we study it, and how we interpret results. So, good research aligns philosophy, methodology, and methods. Okay, so whenever we are designing a research, we have to keep a tab on our own research philosophy. So let me introduce all of us to Saunders's research onion, a very, very, very a great framework by Saunders for understanding how research is designed step by step. The idea that research is not just about choosing a method. We do not just land up into, okay, I will do a survey. Okay, I will do a case study. Okay, I will do an ethnography. Or I will do something else. Okay, I will collect data from here. Okay, I will collect data from there. Okay. Research, when we are talking about research, it is a structured approach. So Saunders' research onion takes us through that understanding about how to approach research and research design, starting with, which starts with actually understanding our philosophical foundations. Now, do we subscribe to subjectivist side, or do we subscribe to the positivist or the objectivist side? Now, do we subscribe to the paradigm of positivism, or do we subscribe to the paradigm of interpretivism? Now, depending on those, all our data collection methods will be determined. So first we have the philosophy, then we have the approach to theory development, which is basically deduction, abduction, and induction, deductive reasoning, which moves from general principles to specific conclusion. Induction is moving from specific observation to general conclusions, and abductive is starting with an observation and seeking the most likely one that explains the phenomena. So after we have done that, we move on to our methods. Do we go for mono method quantitative, or do we take a survey and that's it? Or do we combine survey with something else? Okay. Uh, or mono method qualitative. Do we go with a case study, qualitative case study? Do we go with ethnography, or do we go with action research? Do we go with that, or do we go with multi-method quantitative, combining quantitative methods together, or multi-method qualitative together, or mixed methods research, or do we combine qualitative or quantitative research together? So once we are done with that methodological choices, okay, we select the methodological tools, and whether it would be survey, whether it would be experiments, archival research, case studies, action research, grounded theory, narrative inquiry. Then we think about the time horizon. What is the time horizon? Do we think about conducting the research at one particular point of time, which we call, or which we refer to as cross-sectional time horizon or cross-sectional data? Or do we look about a very broad kind of time horizon to watch and see what has happened throughout this entire period? Once we are done with that, we think about determining the techniques and procedures of data collection and data analysis. So here you see, you cannot just drop into data collection and data analysis. If you want to do good research, you cannot just drop onto data collection and data analysis and get some opinions on them. No, it doesn't work like that. So you have to start with identifying your own research philosophy, the one that you subscribe to, okay, then that research philosophy will guide you through rest of the processes. So first and foremost, for understanding the research philosophy, you have to think about what is the social reality you are looking at. Okay, this is important because it shapes how how I approach my research from the very beginning. Depending on how I understand social reality, I will notice different things, focus on different aspects, collect different kinds of data. For example, as if I think that reality is objective, I would be only focusing on measurable facts. But if I see it as a shaped by people's meanings and experiences, I will pay more attention to opinions, perspectives, how they're interpreting things. This is why research philosophy matters. It helps me, you become more aware of our own assumptions about reality instead of taking them for granted. So, moving on, these are different ontological properties. This is something that we should also be aware of and be respectful. I would use the word respectful of. Why? Recognizing that different ontological properties or perspectives exist is really important. Why? Because I may be studying people, somebody may be studying experiences. I may be studying psyches, somebody might be studying institutions. I may be studying emotions, somebody may be studying discourses. Somebody may be studying motivation, somebody might be studying something else. So what happens is, whenever we are open or whenever we are open to the idea that there are different ontological properties or different ontological perspectives that exist, okay, so we would recognize that our own view is just one position, not an absolute truth. So understanding your own ontology requires exploring alternative perspectives. Understanding that, okay, my friend here is having another perspective. He's approaching his problem in another way, which is also fine, right? So social reality can be conceptualized in different ways. These perspectives reflect different assumptions about what constitutes social reality and where it exists. So there are also varying ideas about how elements of social reality connect and interact. Some ontological properties which are logically incompatible. Okay, like I am of an objective mind, I am of an objective stance, but I am looking into let's say experiences or opinions of people. No, that doesn't work. These are logically incompatible things. So they cannot be easily combined. So researchers like me and you, we should always avoid randomly mixing perspectives just because we like it. So there should be coherence in what we are doing. If we have to mix things, there should be some logic, which starts from what is my philosophy, how I approach truth. So moving ahead, why paradigms shape methodologies and methods. So research paradigms, what we talked about a little back, they provide foundational assumptions about reality, knowledge, values, and communication. These underlying beliefs guide and constrain the kind of questions researchers ask, and therefore what methodologies and specific methods are appropriate or meaningful. For example, when we are talking about positivism, uh, okay, let's go ahead with this one. Uh, when we talk about positivism as a paradigm, it believes that reality is objective, external, singular, measurable, and independent of the knower. So, the research approach that positivist scholars take up normally is focused on this belief about reality. So, it is quantitative research approach. Typical methodologies include experiments, surveys. Data collection methods include structured questionnaires, tests, measurements. Data analysis methods include statistical analysis, hypothesis testing, and so on and so forth. Because positivism believes in objective, measurable reality, which means methods must be standardized, measurable, and reproducible. Thus, Experiments, surveys, and statistical analysis are these things are preferred. These allow hypotheses to be tested and facts to be generalized. On the other side, if we talk about interpretivism, which interprets belief about reality, whose belief about reality, or people who belong to this paradigm, they interpret reality as subjective and constructed through social meaning. Meaning, there can be multiple realities, and the knower and the known, they're not they are not different. Okay, so their research approach normally is qualitative. What are the typical methodologies that they focus upon? It's ethnography, narrative inquiry, case study, arts-based research. Data collection methods include interviews, participant observation, focus groups, creative or arts-based methods, or artifacts, and data analysis methods use thematic analysis or narrative analysis or content analysis, so on and so forth. So this why does this happen? Because if reality is multiple, subjective, and constructed through meaning, methods must access individual or shared perspectives. That is why in-depth interviews, ethnography, case studies, narrative analysis, or arts-based approach, they are used to explore participant experiences in context. Similarly, similar in the case of social constructionism, critical theory, postmodernism, post-relativism, all of these paradigms have different beliefs about reality. Their research approaches also differ. The methodologies that they typically take up differ. Data collection methods differ, and data analysis methods differ. Each paradigm demands certain set of methodologies and methods because only those tools can meaningfully answer the paradigm's driving questions and satisfy its worldview. Sorry. Using the mismatched methods, like let's say a statistical survey for personal meaning making, produces data that is incomplete or meaningless within that philosophical orientation. Sorry. So philosophy, when we are talking about, it is not abstract. It fundamentally shapes what questions we ask, whose voices we hear, and what counts as evidence in our research. So paradigm, method, alignment ensures rigor. If you are moving through these structured ways, uh, it would ensure rigor, relevance, and coherence in inquiry. Hopefully, we have now landed up to understand how philosophy makes a difference. Great. So, Ugo, just ask you to create the breakout rooms. And before we move on to the breakout rooms, I would ask each and everyone sitting here to have a discussion with your colleagues. I'll give you 5 minutes for this with your colleagues and start, asking these questions to yourself or defend yourself about your positions. How do you see the reality? What is your philosophical approach? Which paradigm do you subscribe to? And where do you end up? Once you come back, I would request you to contribute to this discussion by sharing your perspective on which philosophical doctrine you subscribe to. Yes, Ugo, can you just arrange the breakout rooms for 5 minutes? Let people talk amongst themselves.
All right, I'm working on this now. So confirm you can see the breakout rooms now. Yeah, I see some people joining in. Yes, please go on. Join your breakout room. We have about 10 people. 9, yes, in each room. You're all welcome back from the breakout rooms. Tosha, please feel free to continue with the section. I guess everyone is back now. The breakout rooms are closed. Thank you.
Hello. I hope you have heard me, right? So I'm just
Yes, we
repeating.
can hear you.
Okay. So I'm just repeating what I said just now. I didn't realize that I was on mute. Uh, Go to mentimeter.com, and after this discussion that we have had, if you can share where do you stand. Do you stand as positivist, interpretivist, social constructionist, critical theory, postmodernism, pragmatist? I'm sorry, there is a little disturbance because there is a thunderstorm outside going on, so my mic might disturb you a little bit, so I'm keeping it on mute for the next couple of seconds. All right. So I think as time is running by, so we can see that we have, a few people who subscribe to pragmatism, three people subscribe to interpretivism, two to social constructionism, and one has said that they have subscribed to critical theory. Great. This is great. But as I was discussing in my breakout room, the one that I was in, uh, somebody asked that is it a boundary condition kind of? Is it a very strict boundary that we fix ourselves? I would say that it's a very strict boundary if you are if you are at the end of your study. You might realize later on that I started off as an interpretivist, but at the end of my PhD project, I think I am moving towards social constructionism. That is quite possible. It does not happen from from one extreme end to you move on to another extreme end, but somewhere in between, say, let's say, interpretivism to social constructionism, these kind of slight, changes might happen. But that happens. That's something that you should always keep your mind open for. That is why I said we discussed that there are different ontological properties that different people are studying. Sometimes you might come up with a new property after finding out your interviews or your results that you are looking at. So those properties might, I'm telling I'm repeating this because those properties might direct you towards taking up or defining yourself as a social constructionist rather than an interpretivist. That might happen. Great. So we understand in a nutshell that research philosophy matters for us, all of us, but especially for us qualitative researchers, because this creates this charts our route through which we will try to seek our own truth. Great. So moving on, I am slightly departing from my already familiar notions of the situated knowledges, quoting Walter Mignolo, all knowledges are situated and every knowledge is constructed, but this is just the beginning. The question is who, when, why is constructing knowledges. So there's a tendency to note, if you have noted already, that all that we have discussed, all this evolves from the West. I would like to end this session with a question to all that Eurocentric epistemology has been carefully hidden in social sciences, humanities, professional schools, think tanks, or financial sectors, uh, as per Walter Mignolo, right? But what about research on or by people whose worldviews are incommensurable with Anglo-Euro-American discourses? Like Chinese have a different philosophical approach of Confucianism, Taoism. Africans do normally have this is one that I am aware of a philosophy called Ubuntu. Indians, we have different schools of thoughts of philosophy. What about research on this? So there is a different trend which is going on by talking about othering in research. It is not about just difference; it's about positioning certain groups out of the historically Western perspectives. This reflects that reflects colonial legacies, where some knowledges are situated, some are treated as universal, while others are marginalized. So I would leave this question to all of you: that do we really subscribe to the philosophical schools, or we do need to think about other ways of knowing the truth and chart our route through that as well? I would rest my case here. Hope you have got some tenets of understanding from today's discussion. And if you have anything that you need further, uh, these are my references. You have my PPT. My PPT is there with Ugo. She might share it with you. And this is my LinkedIn. You can connect with me to talk about further about my research or any other research that you would like to talk about. Uh, it would be my pleasure to talk to you further about your researches and know more about you. I am still learning. I am still learning, and I would prefer myself to call myself as a student. So all are welcome. So anything else that I can help you with today? I think we have just subsided by the time. Yeah. Hello.
Yes, we are here. Yes, thank you. Thank you
Okay.
so much. So
Yeah.
this has been an amazing presentation. I believe everyone here has one or two things to pick, because I believe this was a section we wanted to do last year so that we will have some background. I call it going back to the basics, because most times in qualitative research, most of us are confused with the terms and research paradigms. And where I'm coming from is because research paradigms has qualitative research has been strictly Western centric opinions, the perspectives from the Western school of thought. So where lives the global South? So that was one of the reasons we started this section. So thank you so much, Tosha. It's been a very interesting section, honestly. And I believe most of us here has picked one or two things. I've shared the slides actually. You can pick it from the chat box. Yeah, Tosha is here. So I think we need to address Chidi's question first.
I'm so sorry. I just missed what you
Mm.
said because there is a.
So I think that's the reason why my internet got disconnected and I could not log in. Yeah. Thank you. So can't hear you. You are on mute.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So Chidi, sorry. Can you
Exactly it was.
Yeah, he was asking for recommendation for the process, the approach that he can use based on the fact that most of the um, methodological approaches is a little bit Western oriented. So I think he's just asking for recommendation for someone who is learning or someone that is quite new to qualitative research, and how to go about it to eventually understand which paradigms that you belong to, or which school of thought you can actually go with in your design. So I think that's the question. I hope I'm right, Chidi. That's the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I would not recommend you to go through this paradigm because that would be unfair both for me as well as you. What I would recommend you to do is do reading. Okay. I think you'll receive my slide. Once you receive my slide, read through Lincoln and Guba, read through Saunders, read through, to understand. If I understand your question properly, right? Read through to understand how you, of which philosophical stream do you subscribe to. Okay. As a person, I do not know you, number one. Number two, I do not know your research problem. Number three, I do not know, your research context. So it would not be, and yeah, of course, beyond that is also, I do not know how will you access your data, right? So if you remember Saunders's onion from the slide that we have discussed, so everything needs to be finalized one by one. So you read through Lincoln and Guba, you read through Saunders, you read through different philosophical approaches, you read through Cresswell, you read through Patton, you read through these books, you read through Mason is a very good qualitative researching book for beginners, right? Try to understand which school do you subscribe to, depending on how what reality you are looking at. Okay, what reality is for you. Okay, what question you are looking forward will tell you that, okay, this is the way that I might approach, and then you will have to defend yourself why I would take this path along, for finding answer to this particular question. There is no prescription. I cannot recommend you one particular qualitative approach that, okay, go ahead with this one. No, I cannot do that because I do not know. I do not have enough information about your research problem. I do not have enough information about your context, and so on and so forth. So I would suggest you the only way to go through this is to read. My dear friend, I am not a doctorate yet. I'm doing my PhD. I'm in the final legs of my PhD. Right. This is how I have learned. I also expected that somebody will tell me, okay, go and do this, go and do that. This is the data collection. This is the way you collect this. Uh, but it did not happen like that. It never happens. It never happens. So you will have to find out your way of looking into your truth. It's not my truth. It's your truth. So your philosophy, your design, your methodology, your methods will have to be on decided by you. We will trust you that yes, okay, this is what he has to present, and that's the knowledge that he is bringing into the table. And I think that is what matters, the knowledge that you create. I hope that makes sense, Chidi. If that's how I pronounce, please pardon me if
Yeah,
I
sure.
messed it up.
It makes sense. I can only add something very small. I came in a bit late, I hope. But if I following and picking on how you were responding to the question, I can imagine the nature of the question he was asking. Let me assume that he was specifically asking for which particular is it research, philosophy, research design, methodology? Should he adopt? I think the best starting point is the data. Everything starts with the data. Even before we bring in the research question, because by the fact that the moment you decide to undertake research, you are prompted by a certain justification. And that's why the justification leads to the research question. Why are you conducting this research? What do you want to find out? What do you want to investigate?
Absolutely,
You see, if
absolutely.
you are investigating, for instance, malaria prevalence in a certain community, then that is very clear. You must be looking for data concerning malaria prevalence. And the question is, where can you get the data and what kind of data are you looking for? And how will you get that data? You see, what kind of instruments do you need to get that data? Are the eyes enough? Are you going to use observation? Okay. If you are going to observe and you get the data, if observation is not sufficient and you need to interact with the community and you interview them, then you know that the observation is not sufficient. You need to have interviews, and interviews. What kind of questions are you going to use? Open-ended? Are you going to use closed-ended? So you are building slowly on the steps, and after a short while, you'll be generating a set of data. So everything now starts with the data. How are you going to analyze the data? And what kind of data have you got? Have you got qualitative data? Have you got quantitative data? Is the data sufficient to give you responses to your research question? And that's where we now start thinking of the methodology. If the interviews are not sufficient, then you might think of conducting narrative analysis. Where you'll keep going back to the interviewees, asking for more information. You are digging deeper to understand the opinions. If you have collected the qualitative data, open-ended questions or closed-ended questions, then you can stop there. But the closed-ended questions might not give you sufficient data to resolve all the outstanding issues you might be asking yourself in the head. See, because when we generate data, the question is, so what? So what? And the idea behind this is the data sufficient to address the research question? These are some of the issues we need to ask ourselves. So, depending on the data you have got from the field, if it is qualitative, then you know that the starting point is qualitative. Earlier
Now,
on, I was
I
here
would
and I saw an onion diagram. Okay, an onion is very interesting because it shows you each and every phase. But there was also another interesting table. Okay, that table was indirectly trying to show you that if you start with the qualitative data, qualitative goes with which research philosophy. Okay, it is either social constructism, interpretivism. Okay, if you generate, for instance, quantitative data, you have the questionnaire. The questionnaire is you have used the questionnaire. You have got whether you have used the Likert scale or whether you are conducting experiments. You have got some data that is a little bit more objective and mainly full of figures. Okay, so now you cannot use data that is generated and is now in a numeric form, as we call it, and then you say you are going to use interpretism. No, interpretism does not work with the quantitative data. So it's important to have alignment across the board, starting with the data, the nature of the data. The nature of the data will lead you to the nature of the research philosophy, okay? And then that one will also question the methods, what kind of methods are you using to gather the data? Is the data sufficient? Earlier on, there was the last row was talking of mixed methods. You may generate qualitative data and may not be sufficient to answer to address your research question. If you are looking at, for instance, cost savings, you cannot address cost savings by merely looking at it qualitatively, because when you make a statement, it might not be sufficient to address it, the extent to which you are realizing cost savings. So sometimes you may need to supplement some of the data. For instance, if it is qualitative, you add on quantitative in order to best address the research question. So everything starts with the data, then the research question, then the methods, and everything must be clearly aligned together. If there is a misalignment, there must be a very strong justification as to why that is the case. I think for now, that's what we can say, but there is a lot much more to this kind of question. Thank you, Ugo and Barnejee.
thank you, Charles. That's a way to look at a research problem. But normally, if you ask me, this is not my way of approaching a research problem. I would first, as Charles was saying, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing you by calling you by first name. As Charles was saying, this is an approach, yes, and it works for a lot of people. Okay, to define, get the data, think about methodology, think about the research problem, and get the data, and then doing a backward integration. Okay, find out, okay, if I am falling into this pragmatist research philosophy, or I am falling into an interpretivist way. I would suggest you to, as a early career research, I would like to differ here with Charles. That works. I would not say that doesn't work. It might work for Charles. It might work for a lot of people other out there, right? But depending on your experiences, you will also learn that there's the other way that I am prescribing as per Saunders' research onion. You think about what you are comfortable with. Okay, your philosophical approach, your philosophical inclination. Are you comfortable with numbers? If you get numeric data, will you be able to interpret it? I don't know. Do you take up with that kind of a research problem? Are you comfortable with inductive analysis, or are you comfortable with deductive analysis? This is the step. This is the other way of moving into, right? So yeah, I know it might be confusing for a lot of lot of early career people, or people who are starting off,
Yes.
and really, you have to walk the talk. You have to walk the talk. You take up Charles's approach. You take up my approach, whichever works for you. But I would like to beg to differ with Charles here and take my stand that it would work for me if I know myself first. Will I be able to interpret numeric data? I don't know. Do I know statistics? I don't know. How comfortable I am in mathematics? I don't know. Right? So my approach would be according to me, not according to the data that I'm getting over there. Do I go into that kind of a problem that answer comes up with a numeric answer? No. I need some answers to questions which have non-numeric answers or non-numeric data, right? So that would be my approach. But yes, I acknowledge that Charles's way also does work for some people, not for me. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles. And thank you, Tosha. It's been a good day, and I'm seeing more people joining in. I believe is maybe some people were confused with the time. Sorry. Most times the time we give is the time for UK timing because of rising scholars. INAPS is within the Oxford UK, so most times we give your time for UK. So if you can check your time with UK time, sometimes some people are at 6 p.m. already, while over here we are just we have in Lagos, in Nigeria, we have the same time with UK. So it depends on where you are. So if you can just Google it and check the time, I think it will really go a long way to help you in joining the sections. So I think we'll stop now. And thank you so much, Tosh. I think we've even overstayed. But we have more sections coming up. We had one last week. We have another one next week. So we will keep having sections like this. But today we actually visited based on the idea that we haven't actually had an interaction for us to understand the philosophy behind qualitative research. So that was what we did. But we have the videos available. I'll put it in the chat if you want to check the video between now and next week. We have video available. So I'll just put in the link for next week. We have a mixed method. Yes, we have a mixed method in the NORHED and Rising Scholars Introduction to Mixed Methods. So if you also have an idea about quantitative research and you also want to check both quantitative and qualitative, I'll put the link in the chat. You can join the section. So thank you so much. I believe we'll have more time for us to discuss with Tosha and any other person that has questions and any contribution. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you. So we'll just quickly take a picture. This is the time for picture. We always have a picture at the end of all sections. If you can turn on your video, I can see John
Sure.
Paul. Yes, I can see Malaling. I hope I got the name right. Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Hello. Yes. So, if you are not here, we will not have this section. So it's very nice of you to join. And thank you so much, everyone. Yeah. So we'll just take a picture. Yes, Dr. Charles, thank you for turning on your video. We just take 1, 2, say cheese, smile. If you don't like cheese, you can say something else. Yes. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you all for coming, and it's been a good day. Thank you, Tosha. We really appreciate your contribution, and we thank everyone who has stayed up to this moment. It's a good morning, it's a good afternoon, it's a good evening, depending on your time. We hope to see you next section. We hope you can have your questions coming in the WhatsApp group. And then
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.